Alright, now let's add a new module to this application. So I'm going to create a new file, logger.js. Let's assume we are going to create a module for logging messages, and we are going to reuse this module in various parts of this application or potentially in other applications. So logger.js. Now in this module, let's assume that we are going to use one of those remote logging services for logging our messages. So there are websites out there which provides logging as a service. They give us a URL and we can send an HTTP request to that URL to log messages in the cloud. So here, I'm going to declare a variable like URL and set it to something like this: http sudo logger.io/log. And of course, I'm making this up. It may not be a true service out there, but let's imagine in this implementation, we are going to send an HTTP request to this endpoint. Now, we also need a function called mylog that takes the message, and in this function, we are going to send an HTTP request. However, to keep things simple, we just want to focus on modularity. We don't want to get distracted from all the details of sending HTTP requests. So for now, I just want to log this message on the console. So console.log s. Okay. Now this variable and this function, mylog, are both scoped to this module. They are private. They are not visible from the outside. However, in app.js, which is our main module, we want to use this logger module. So we should be able to access this mylog function. We should be able to call it from the app module. So we need to make this public. We need to make it visible from the outside. Now, in the last lecture, you saw this module object. One of the properties here is the export. We can see this property is set to an empty object. Anything that we add to this object will be exported from this module and will be available outside of this module. So back in our logger module, I'm going to set module.export.log. So I'm adding a method for log to this export object and simply setting it to this mylog function defined here. Okay. In other words, the object that we are exporting here has a single method called log. Similarly, if you want to export this URL, we could do something like this: module.export.url. We set it to URL. And of course, we can change the name that is exported to the outside. For example, internally, we call this variable URL, but when we export it, we may call it endpoint. Okay? Now, in this case, we don't need to export this URL variable because this is purely implementation detail. So in real-world applications, every module might have several variables and functions. We only want to export a subset of these members to the outside because we want to keep this module easy to use. Let me give you a metaphor. Think of a laptop. A laptop has a screen and a keypad on the outside. And these are the buttons or objects that we interact with. So these objects represent the public interface of a laptop. Okay? But inside the laptop, there are a lot of other objects. We don't need to know anything about these objects. They are implementation details, and they can change significantly from one model to another. What we see on the outside is almost stable and static across different models. So, in our logger module, this URL is implementation detail. Other modules don't need to know anything about it. They only need to call this mylog function. So we export it, make it public, and we keep the URL private. So I'm going to delete this last line. Okay? So we are done with our logger module. Now we need to load this module and use it inside app.js.